This past Saturday, September 26, Donald Trump nominated Amy Coney Barrett to fill the seat left empty by the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court. The headline at revcom.us put it well, calling this a, quote, home run for fascism and oppression, and an imminent threat to abortion and all reproductive rights. To get into who Amy Coney Barrett is and what a threat she is on the Supreme Court, I want to read first from her own words. This is a quote from a commencement speech she gave to the graduating class at Notre Dame Law School in 2006. She said, "Always keep in mind that your legal career is but a means to an end. That end is building the kingdom of God. If you can keep in mind that your fundamental purpose in life is not to be a lawyer, but to know, love, and serve God, you will truly be a different kind of lawyer." Now think about what that means and the danger that represents. Let's be clear, it's one thing to have one's religious views inform your personal life, who you want to marry, vote for, etc. It is completely different and completely wrong to have your religious views shape the law, how the Constitution is interpreted, and the rights and the lives of millions of others throughout society. And in this regard, Amy Coney Barrett not only advocates a horrific position, but her record as a judge has demonstrated this. As a judge, Amy Coney Barrett has ruled to expand the rights of religious bigots to discriminate against LGBTQ people. She has backed up and supported Trump's cruel and vicious laws that would require immigrants to make the impossible choice between giving up medical care or food for hungry or sick children, or risk being thrown out of the country. Philosophically speaking, Amy Coney Barrett is an originalist, which means she believes the Constitution should be interpreted as it was intended by those who wrote it. Men who not only defended, but many participated in the system of slavery in this country. Now, to bring alive just one dimension of what Amy Coney Barrett's appointment on the Supreme Court would serve, I want to talk about Becky Bell. Becky Bell was 16 years old when she found out that she was pregnant. But she lived in Indiana, so she couldn't get an abortion without telling her parents, and she didn't want to do this. She was ashamed. She didn't want to disappoint them. So one Saturday night, she told her parents she was going out to a party. When she came home, she was disheveled, she was feeling ill, and she was in tears. Over the next several days, she got sicker and sicker, until finally her parents dragged her to the family doctor and she was hospitalized. By that time, it was too late, though. Becky Bell died on September 16, 1988, and the coroner, when they examined her body, ruled that it had been because of an unsafe, illegal abortion. Now, Becky Bell's life concentrates the shame, the fear, and the risk that is going to be put on millions and millions of women and girls as abortion becomes ever more restricted. Before abortion was made legal in 1973, millions of women, all women, lived with the fear of getting pregnant when they didn't want to have a child. The fear that they would be forced to have a child against their will, to foreclose their lives, give up their dreams, and be enslaved by forced motherhood, or risk their lives in a desperate attempt to get an illegal, unsafe abortion, and many, many women died doing so. This is the future that Amy Coney Barrett's appointment to the Supreme Court will make closer. And if there's any doubt, you can look at her record on this as well. Just last year, she had the chance as a judge to vote in favor of letting the state of Indiana, the state that killed Becky Bell, make restrictions on teenagers getting abortions even greater. And her record as judge also shows other rulings, restricting abortion and even women's access to birth control. But the danger of putting Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court goes far beyond her personal horrific views and rulings as a judge. Because appointing Coney Barrett, confirming her to the Supreme Court, would tip the balance of the court into a majority pro-fascist court, radically reshaping the highest court in the land into an instrument of fascist atrocity, an instrument of legal authority backing up the genocidally racist, the theocratically enslaving, the terroristically repressive, and the environmentally destroying program of the Trump-Pence fascist regime that they are racing to lock into place. But even this is not all, because a big part of the Trump-Pence program to carry this forward and to lock this in place is to stay in power no matter what happens in the upcoming election.
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. You know that.
Right now, Donald Trump is already stealing the election and preparing and threatening even greater levels of violence to stay in power should he lose. And he is actively subverting and perverting the election. In its call for people to come into the streets starting October 3rd and every day after that in growing, nonviolent, mass political protests demanding Trump-Pence out now, RefuseFascism.org has called this a rolling coup. And this is a correct diagnosis. This is a rolling coup going on. And should we end up in a situation where the election is contested and gets thrown to the courts to decide, the Trump-Pence regime and the fascists around it want to make sure that they have a fascist majority on the court locked in place to tip the scales in their favor should they get to decide the election. Trump says this openly.
Fair question. Yes, I think it's very important. I think this will end up in the Supreme Court, and I think it's very important that we have 9 justices.
In other words, at stake with this confirmation is both the consolidation of a fascist majority court and the carrying forward of a fascist coup to lock this direction in place. With all this on the line, you'd think the Democrats would be out there fighting, right? Wrong. Soon after this appointment, Democratic Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said this. "Let me be clear," he said. "If Leader McConnell and Senate Republicans move forward with this, then nothing is off the table next year." Now, nothing is off the table is meant to sound tough, but right there he's saying next year. After this confirmation goes forward, after Trump has likely stolen the election or stayed in power some other way, after all this has gone down, this is not a fight. This is capitulation. And if the Democrats really wanted to fight this, they say, oh, we don't have the votes to stop the nomination. If they wanted to fight this, there's all kinds of ways they could do it. They could have shut down the government by denying funding. They could open up new impeachment hearings against any of the many crimes Trump has carried out. They could sit down on the floor of the Senate and refuse to let the proceedings go forward. Or most of all, they could call forward the millions of people in this society, the furious women, the LGBTQ people, black people and those who care about their lives, immigrants and those who care about the children in the cages and much worse to come, those motivated by a desire to preserve the environment, those who see what's at stake in this Supreme Court nomination. They could be called forward to struggle against this. But the Democrats have not done this and will not do this. The reasons for this are very profound, and they're talked about in a series that was recently published at revcom.us by Bob Avakian. The title of the series is important too. It's called Voting Will Not Be Enough. We need to take to the streets and stay in the streets, demanding Trump-Pence out now. And in part 1 of this series, Bob Avakian goes deeply into the reality that the Democrats will not fight Trump the way he needs to be fought. He breaks down why it is that they do not want to arouse the millions who hate this direction to go up against it, especially up against the fascists who will not easily be backed down, because they don't want the stability that would bring to their system. These Democrats don't want to run on that. They don't want to defeat Trump and win through doing that, and they don't want to govern in a society where people's expectations and hopes to see an end to this oppression, to the oppression of women and LGBTQ people, to the terror against immigrants, to the white supremacy and police brutality against black people. They don't want to elevate these expectations because they cannot deliver, because their system needs these forms of oppression. So for these reasons and many more gone into in that piece, the Democrats will not fight this the way it needs to be fought. And this Supreme Court battle is a concentration of this. But our interests are not the same as the interests of the Democratic Party. Our interests lie with the people of the world, with humanity as a whole, and with stopping this nightmare. So it is up to us to call forward this anger among millions, the people who don't want to see this fascist nightmare go forward. It is up to us to call them forward in struggle and to take up and bring many of them into answering the call put out by refusefascism.org to pour into the streets starting October 3rd. And every day after that, across this country in public squares, raising the demand, Trump, Pence out now. Where there are struggles against this nomination, we should unite with them and we should bring this demand in. But most of all, again, we need to rally people's anger and their refusal to accept this fascism on the court and throughout the rest of society to join us in the streets demanding Trump, Pence out now, because unless and until this entire regime is removed from power, the question of a fully fascist legal system in this society and a fully fascist society as a whole is a question of when, not if. And that when could happen very soon. It is racing in that direction unless we stop it. So this nomination of Amy Coney Barrett, the fascist determination to ram this nomination through before the election, the abject capitulation of the Democratic Party in the face of this, all this has elevated the stakes. It is on us to call forward this anger and the outrage of the millions who do not want to see this happen. It is on us to bend every effort, and this nomination must fuel that. It must fuel that, and it must fuel us. The battle for the future is being shaped now. Trump, Pence out now, into the streets October 3rd and every day going forward from there.